So, when it was September of last year, I went to a beautiful place called Guam. Guam is a small island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And it's where they say the sun, it's where they say the West starts its day, because it's all the way in there. It's actually not that far from the Philippines and Japan. It's so far away. So this island is so beautiful. Obviously, it's an island, so it's surrounded by beaches, most of which are swimmable. The coral life there is amazing. Like, people come from around the world to go there and to go deep sea diving. I didn't go deep sea diving when I was there, but I did go snorkeling, and I did go down to this thing in the middle of the ocean where it's cement and you get to go on a like twirly staircase, see everything underneath. It was a very beautiful place. There was a place called Tuman Beach, which was incredible. And it was white sands beaches you could swim in. The coral was there, but the coral wasn't too bad, especially around like the touristy beaches, which generally Tuman was. I was lucky enough a couple days into the trip to get a hotel room with just a panoramic of the ocean going by, and seeing the sunset go down on the porch of that room with the ocean underneath was just something incredible. Something incredible. Also, there was another place called Inarahan Pools. Inarahan Pools. Took me a long time to learn that name. Well, I guess a couple days before we went in it, it was, there was a big storm. And in this storm, do I turn left or right? Okay, I go straight. And a couple days before, in the Inarahan Pools, there was a big storm. And I guess it had a shark bring it over the rocks into the pools. Now, the pools were being worked on, so nobody was there, and it was kind of untouched for like at least a week. So the pools themselves were crystal clear. Like Dory from Finding Nemo, and Nemo, like all those kind of fish. I could like touch them and see them and put my face up to them. And that's a memory that you'll never lose. That you'll just never lose in your life. But when I was in one of the pools that you jumped in, I guess I could technically say I was swimming with the sharks, which is pretty cool to say. But it was really the pools around it that were just amazing. Oh yeah, and over at Tuman Beach, if you walk far enough to the right, there's this cool, like, kind of jungle path with like a rock path that it becomes, and then there's like a rope bridge. However, the rope bridge was broken, so we had to hold on to rocks to get across. And we finally got across, and it was nice. There was a beach, but this is the beach that was not used very much. So there was a lot of, I think it's mitochondria on the beach. Made me really itchy. But that's beyond the point, or like besides the point. There was also Talafofo Falls. Right next to Talafofo Falls is this place called the Yokoi Cave. Now, the Yokoi Cave was a place where a Japanese soldier hid out for 30 years when he thought World War II was still happening. So the Japanese, they were in Guam, and they briefly occupied it for like a year or something during World War II. And there was one soldier who didn't know if the war ended or not, or who won or not, and he didn't want to be either a prisoner of war or MIA, missing in action, or whatever they call it. No, not MIA. I don't know. But anyways, he hid out there for 30 plus years. They finally found him in the late 80s, and everything was fine. He met up with his family. It was kind of a trippy story. So yeah, he hid there, and there's a little museum to it, and another Guam history museum, which Guam has a really sad history, to be honest. Where was I? So yeah, Yokoi Cave, and right next to it is this place called Talofofo Falls, which is just an amazing waterfall and area to swim in. It's like just amazing, and it basically just goes on, and you kind of take one of those ski lifts down to the bottom, and then slowly kind of walk in a giant circle until you make it back to the ski lift, which is pretty cool. So now, after all that, let's see, what else as far as cool stuff? I think that was most of the cool stuff right there. So I would say the history of Guam. The history of Guam is very sad. First, they were just island people. You know, there was little island fighting, but for the most part, the people of Guam... Oh, shit. So the people of Guam have a very turbulent history. First, they were just cool. First, they were just like cool island folk. Now, what happened was around 1898, the Spanish came to the island, just on a couple like exploratory boats. Now, what happened was the people from Guam, mostly the Chamorro people, went up to them in boats and gave them food and fruits and like light clothing, things like that, tools. And the Spanish were like, thank you, but they didn't want to give anything back. So then the Chamorro went on their boats and took the stuff. So then, from then on in, for the next 300 years, they called it the Island of Thieves. Like a pirate island. It's so awful. So, oh, watch out, dude. So, I mean, obviously, as soon as the Spanish saw it, they decided that it was theirs. Thank you. But really, about 150 years ago, that's when they made it like a Spanish colony. Now, the Spanish were really, really awful to the Chamorro people. Really, really awful. And they would just beat them up, rape them, burn down their huts, just destroy their boats, do everything, put them into slavery. It was really, really awful. And this lasted for, let's see, about 250 years. 250 years, 300 years, it was like this. Now, there's a story of a Chamorro prince and a Chamorro princess, which would have been locals to the island, which are. And there was a Spanish lieutenant. Now, the Spanish lieutenant, he wanted to marry the Chamorro princess, but the Chamorro princess didn't want to. So what ended up happening was the Chamorro prince and princess went to the top of this peak called Lover's Point. That's what they call it right now, Lover's Point. And the story is that they both wrapped their braids together, the prince and the princess, and they jumped over the mountain because they didn't want the Spanish general or the Spanish lieutenant to marry her. She would have rather died with the prince by jumping over that cliff. She would rather jump over that cliff with the person she loves than marry the lieutenant. It's a very touching story, and the view from there is amazing. But yeah, like the story is really great. I like to make the joke that the girl, like the princess and the prince, how they were gonna jump before the lieutenant came to marry her. I always make the joke that right as they were about to jump, the guy changed his mind. And so they kiss, they're ready to do it, they're ready to make this jump, and the girl jumps, and the guy's like, wait, no! Splat. But, the romantic story is much better. So the Spanish kind of held on to the country until the end of the 1800s. I think it was 1898 or 1901. And that's when America came along. And America kind of said it was, it was more of a colony. Not quite a colony, but kind of like Puerto Rico, but with absolutely no rights. Even though, the islands don't have much rights. If Hawaii didn't fight so hard, then they wouldn't have senators. You know what I mean? Like, America doesn't really respect islands, unfortunately. And you know what? They should, because... Oh, alright, I haven't gotten there yet. So, the Americans kind of came, took it over. They had, like, kind of a light rule over it. I mean, like, so they weren't murdering and pillaging and raping as much. I bet there was some of that, but I don't think it was bad as the Spanish. Now, in World War II, the Japanese took over Guam, I think, from, like, 1940 to 42 or something, 1940 to 41. It was like 2 or 3 years that the Japanese took over Guam, and they were just as bad, if not worse, than the Spanish were. So the Japanese, they were raping and beating and pillaging and burning things down, just the same as the Spanish were 40 years ago. So, I mean, America near the end of World War II, they eventually, I guess, killed or pushed off the rest of the Japanese soldiers in the island. And then it became like an American, not owned, kind of under America's wing of an island. And then the people of Guam fought, and eventually they became, what is that called? That, Puerto Rico is. It's not a colony, basically around the 50s and 60s and 70s, people from Guam fought for more ability to run their own lives by electing their own officials and not just having it be white people who are running the place, and instead you get Chamorro and Filipino people in there with, to take control of their own communities. So they have a mayor, they have state senators, I guess, all that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, they don't have one vote in the Senate or the House of Representatives, but they do have an assistant to a mayor. They have an assistant to a senator. So they basically just have a guy who goes up there and says, hey, look, this is what our island wants. And that's kind of where we come to now. And what's going on with Guam right now, what you really see is kind of end-stage capitalism. Like you see an island where the minimum wage is like $7.50 and a meal at McDonald's is like $12. So if you can't buy a meal off of what you make in an hour, something's kind of wrong, They're getting tourist prices there, but they're getting paid like federal minimum wage. So what happens is you have to end up living with all your family for a long time. Unless you're a professional, like a dentist or something, or like a doctor, but then you have to, still you're gonna have family who wants to live there because they're not paying enough over there. So things are hurting there economically for people. I don't even know how it is with the furthering inflation because it's been about 6 months since I've been there. So, this beautiful, beautiful island. The American military has already poisoned a little bit of its water and bleached some of its coral by accident. And the American military has bases all over the island. There's 2 American military bases, and then 50 or 100 of those weird globe things that they say is for satellites, but who the fuck knows what's in those? Those could be missiles aimed directly at China, just in case. So you think, where does the sun start in the west? It starts in Guam. And Guam is the closest island to China. So we escalate things with China. What's the first thing they do? They completely take over Taiwan, which is already kind of halfway China. So they completely take over Taiwan. And then what's next? You know what I mean? What's the next American territory? It'd be Guam. It would be Guam. Guam is in danger right now, and they're not getting paid enough. They're not getting paid enough in order to be in such danger. And that scares me because this was a very beautiful island. And I don't want it to go away because Boeing needs to make more money selling airplanes or missiles. You know? Because I thought it was a really beautiful place that also had beautiful people. And the sun was so bright. So I hope Guam stays alive. They call it Guam. I hope Guam stays alive. I hope it doesn't get bombed or taken over by China, just like it was taken over by so many other people. Honestly, I think Guam should start buying some guns. Get ready for this because the war with China, I would say it's pretty imminent. I would say it's probably going to happen. I give it like 70-30. It really depends on what happens with Russia. Because if Russia falls, then China is in kind of a scary position. But yeah, that's Guam. Guam. And that's about the end of my video. I went from the trail all the way here. Okay, 16 minutes. I think I kind of explained Guam pretty decently. I might have repeated a couple times. Well, see you guys. See you guys. Bye. Oh, oops.